Hi everybody, welcome back to Missy's Imaginings. It is good to be back. We had a doll show, a couple weeks ago that went really well, so I was able to see some people there. And for those of you who really cringe and get, like nails on a chalkboard, I am putting my glasses with lenses up. So they're not laying lenses down. I have a couple things to go over. Today I wanted to sew the skirt for the little BJD third scale suit, just so we can put that skirt together. But also I had some wonderful finds. So if you're looking for really cool things that you can use in the doll hobby, now is one of the really great times to find things right at your fingertips. So I was in Walmart, and now Halloween is coming up, so the costume aisles are full of stuff. And most people think, oh, it's cosplay, it's costume, but there's a lot of cool things that you can use for the doll hobby. So while I was there, I found some really cool purple eyelashes, which a lot of times I'll just get people eyelashes and I cut them to size for BJDs. But then if the lashes tend to be, you think, oh, they're way too long for a doll, you can simply snip into the lashes and make them the right length for your doll. So let's open this up here, if I can figure out how to do it. The whole clue is to be smarter than the packaging, right? So let's pull one of these out and we can kind of give a demonstration. So on the doll lashes, what I would do is, because I've used people lashes, like I say, for my dolls, so I measure and cut not only the length, but once that I have the lashes on the doll, I don't cut across the lash to make it a length. I'll just cut in at an angle from the length itself with my scissors at this angle and kind of trim. And that way I'm not only trimming the length, but it's, instead of having just a block line, which if you want a block line, you can just cut that way. I just don't prefer that. So by cutting up into the lashes, you can kind of eliminate some of that length and thin them out so it's not just a block of lashes. Makes it look a little more natural. Then some of the real long ones, once you get it to where you want it, you can kind of trim at an angle again and just customize that to whatever doll you're doing. So I found purple lashes and some really pretty pink lashes. So I thought that would be really fun. So doll lashes, like I say, that's a fun find. And they were, what were they? $2.98 a pair. And a lot of times you can find really cool ones at the Dollar Tree. They also get some Halloween things in, so you might find some there. I just hadn't ever seen the purple or the pink ones, and so I wanted to snag those. I was looking for blue, but the only thing they had with blue was ones with like the feathers on the outside edge, and even once you trim them down to what you want, the feathers would be gone, and then the inside lashes were just black. So I thought, no, I'm not going to buy those. The other thing is, a lot of times, oh, I thought I had one hanging here. I had some colored tresses that you can put into your hair, and it's just like a little thin, strand of color that people can put in their hair as like a little, what's the word I want, that you use in a weave or whatever. And so I have some of those somewhere, and they're just little thin pieces, and I was always going to use those to make a wig. But it would just take a lot of them to get the size of wig I wanted and the length that I wanted. So I haven't really done that. But the other day when I was in Walmart, I found these. So I've never seen these in the costume aisle before. But not only is it an extension braid, if I can find where the opening is. Here's the opening. Right here. We'll just cut this open. Since my glasses are off and I can't see this. But this braid, look how thick that is. That is a lot of hair. And so this is like, it's hard to buy this much hair for $2.98 at a doll shop. So not only that, it's variegated, so you could take the long tresses all at once and have a really long wig if you've got a tall BJD, or you could cut at a certain length and have the colors interspersed. It's just so much hair that's just perfect for wig making. So there was one of the rainbow color, so I snagged that because I will be making a wig out of that. So we'll do a video of that so you can see that. Also, there was one, oh, and here I found this. That's an ombre pink with dark at the top and light at the bottom. So these two, again, $2.98, and it's not the real, like, slick, plasticky, I mean, it is a plastic, it's a polyester, you know, polymer blend. It's not real by any means, but it's not the real shiny, slick hair that's kind of hard to work with. It's got more of a rough finish, which just makes it look a little more user-friendly when making wigs because it has more volume to it. So both of these were $2.98, like I say, in the costume section at Walmart. So it's an awesome time to find fun supplies if you want to make wigs, if you want to customize your dolls with eyelashes. I'm not sure on some of the coloring they use that you'd want to use that because a lot of it is very oily and you don't want to use that on your BJDs. But there is also a lot of really cool costume fabrics. So you can find things that you could get for, you know, a couple bucks, $6, and take it apart and use the fabrics for specialty items that you want to do for your dolls. So it's just another one of those things. Think outside the box. Find something that you know you can use even though it's not in a doll aisle, you know, or a doll store. It's still awesome material for crafting your own things. So I just wanted to show you those, kind of get an idea of some things you might want to do, and definitely will be making this into tresses and putting it into a wig. So I'm excited to do that. So that will be coming up. I'm not sure if I'll get to it like immediately, but we'll get to it. So we'll be doing that, and then today we'll be going ahead and putting together that skirt. So we'll switch up the camera and get started sewing. I have the pieces of the skirt all cut out, and the only mistake I made, unfortunately, was that the skirt front is supposed to be cut on a fold, and I totally forgot that and cut two pieces. So on this, I am going to just simply, instead of taking a 1/4 inch seam, which I normally do when I sew, I'm just going to do 1/8 of an inch seam here, and then when I put the front to the side front, I'll also just do 1/8 of an inch seam rather than a 1/4 inch seam, and that way it will compensate on this edge for having to do that, which now I'll have a seam down the center of my skirt, which I didn't want, but I'll go ahead and do that just so we can still put it together. When you lay out your pieces, I have little dots. The single dots are where those two seams go together, the double dots go together, and the triple dots go together. So that's how you can match those up. I always do a 1/4 inch seam, of course, when I sew. Before I begin, I am going to put the dart in the pieces of my back facing, and then I will go ahead and attach the back facings to the front facing, one on each side. I'm also going to take my serger and go down the center back. It'll have to be in two sewing. I'll start here and go this way, then start here and go down, so that my serger tails will go off the ends and not be in the middle. So I'll serge away from the notch. If you're familiar with a serger, you'll know why I'm doing that, because that way you can wrap that tie end around when you begin. If you don't have a serger, you can also simply zigzag stitch down the edges on a regular sewing machine to finish that. So I'll be going ahead and doing all my prep work, and then I'll come back to the camera and we're going to go ahead and start putting this together. If you're unfamiliar with putting in the darts, all I did was mark the top edge where those lines would actually be on the fabric, and I put a dot where the point is, so that I have 3 places marked: the top edge of the dart and the point. Then to sew it, I simply fold so that those 2 dots match, and I sew from that dot, or the top edge there, down to the dot that marks the bottom, so it looks like this when you're finished. So you've essentially just folded that fabric and sewn that little edge together, and then on the outside, or the good side of the fabric, that's what it would look like. And it just helps you add shape to a garment. Instead of just having a big flat piece, it kind of takes that so that it'll bend in, and this is going to be on the back, so it's going to kind of take in around that waistline and then allow fullness at the bottom for where that will lay against the hips. So that's kind of what you do to put in a dart. So I just thought, I haven't actually shown sewing a dart for a while, so if you're new to the channel and new to sewing, that's kind of what you do to put a dart into your fabric and kind of the reason for it. The facing is now put together, so I have each side attached to the center front with the darts in place. On the inside, because none of these seams will show once the garment is finished, I did not finish the edges of the seam allowance in that facing. Anytime you add finishing stitches, or if you have your seam allowance serged together, that's always going to add extra bulk. And while on people clothing it doesn't make that much of a difference, on doll clothing it can. The smaller you go, the less bulk you want. So even though this is for a 3rd scale, I still don't want a ton of bulk on the seams if I can avoid it. So because this won't show, it's going to be totally hidden once the garment is done and the facing is turned the correct way. I didn't even bother finishing this because it's not going to have any wear and tear, so it's not going to ravel, it's not going to show. I didn't finish it. On the skirt seams, however, because the facing is only going to go down, you know, this far, the rest of this length is going to show. So on the skirt seams, where I put this skirt together, for example, I did serge that front seam just because that is actually going to show in the finished garment. The facing, of course, will lay across the top. So all this would show, and so that's why I go ahead and finish any of the seams that will show or that are going to have wear and tear from your fingers as you're putting them on, or you know, switching it up with different dolls or whatever. So I do finish those. So that's just kind of a rule of thumb. Anytime if you're working with facings and you want to avoid that extra bulk in your garment, you don't have to always finish every single edge. Just take into account where that edge is going to be once the garment is finished. So we have our prep work done, and I realized since the facing is going to be sewn to the back along this edge, I didn't have to finish this, so that was nice. So I only finished the bottom edge of the skirt because there again, that's going to show once the garment is finished. So now comes the point of putting in our little inserts. So what I'm going to do is on the front edges and the side edges where the little triangle insert will be placed, it's indicated on the pattern piece. So the first step I'm going to do is to put one little flare on each side of the front. So with right sides together, and you want to watch, this fabric has a real pretty little braided strip between the white strips, so I want to make sure that shows. So this is the wrong side, and then the right side has that pretty little braided texture in the fabric. So with right sides together, I'm going to simply sew this little triangle onto the bottom edge on both sides of the front, because that will place those, and then I don't have to worry about them anymore. And then also on the back edge between the back piece and the side back piece, that's where the other triangles are going to go. So to avoid any confusion on which center pieces, I don't even worry about those. I'm going to go ahead and attach these to the back pieces and have them placed as well. So on the back piece, I'm going to take one little triangle and attach it to this back piece, And I'm just simply going to sew a 1/4 inch seam up to the top, and then also on this back piece with right sides together, also that little triangle in place. And that way all the flares will be placed onto the garment, and then I'll go ahead and assemble the sides of the garment together. So once those are in place, I'll come back to the camera. Here are the pieces with the little flares sewn in place, so on each side of the front and then each of the back pieces, and I've laid them out from center out on each side. My next step is going to be to place these pieces in the correct order. So this is the skirt side front with the 1 notch. So the edge with 1 notch is what attaches to the front. So that will be laid down, and since I have my right side up, I'm going to lay these with the right side up. So this edge is the one that goes to the front, and then this edge goes to the front, just like that. And then on the side back pieces, the curved edge goes towards the back. So I'm going to take this curved edge with the right side up towards the back, right there. And this one, the curved edge goes towards the back piece with the right side up. So this is the order that I'm going to sew these together. I'm simply going to start at the top and sew all the way down, and now this will be considered as one piece, so that will just bend as I sew down the seam, and I'm going to simply put every single seam together and then finish the edges. Now on the ones with the little flares, I did finish from the top down to the bottom, but I didn't do all the way up onto here because this will all be finished when I attach it to this. The other thing to note is on the little triangle pieces, it's curved on the edge just to eliminate bulk, like I always do. But you're only going to sew up to where that dot is, because the dot and the line indicates the sewing seam. So you're not actually going to sew off the pattern edge. You only sew to where that dot would be. So on the pieces you can see that there is fabric left at the top once I have that sewn on, and that's because I only sewed as high as where that dot was to indicate. So then when I actually fold this over, now I will be sewing to that same seam and then down along the other angle. So that's just kind of a note to take place when you're looking at a pattern and you want to know where to sew. Just take into account where that actual sewing line is, and that kind of helps you know where to sew. Also on these patterns, this dot will indicate where the actual sewing line is for those pattern pieces. So see how that matches there. It's a little bit taller, but there we go. So anyway, that's just a hint on that part. So now I will go ahead, put all these edges together, and then come back to the camera when I have everything sewn together. And here are all the pieces sewn together, so I just need to go ahead and press that open and finish the edges, but I thought I'd show how that's going to look, and those little flares are just going to add a little more volume down by the hemline. And here is the skirt. The pieces all put together. I did go ahead and serge the bottom edge so that I can go ahead and hem it. So you'll see there's lots of flare on the bottom edge. The next order of business is we're going to take the facing and the skirt with right sides together, and I'm just going to pin this across the top. I'm going to sew up the side, across the top, and then down the next side. So that will be my next order of business, because that will finish the top edge of the skirt. I designed the skirt so it will not have a waistband, and it will not have any elastic in the waist. Hopefully it's just fitted and it will just fit the doll with just a flat waist. I just kind of thought that would be a fun thing to try. So that's all we're going to do is sew up, across, and down. So that'll be our next step. And maybe I'll leave the camera running. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. Okay, before I sew it, I was going to go ahead and also point out that I want to make sure that these seam allowances are open on the facing side the way I wanted them to lay. And then on the seam allowances for the inside of the skirt, generally my habit is I always try to make the seam allowances go from the center towards the back. So in these seam allowances, I pinned so that I was actually pinning those seam allowances down the way that I wanted those to lay when I sew it. That's just kind of something I do. It's whatever your preference is, but if you're kind of watching the way I pinned, that's how I kind of do it. I like the seam allowances to go one way or the other. The only one I'm not worried about is the center seam allowance, because it is so tiny, where these are all 1/4 inch about, but this one is not. Then this one doesn't really matter because it's either way and it's in the front. But the other ones I always kind of like to have them lay the same way. So now we'll go ahead and run this through the machine. So here will be the top edge of our skirt. The next step I'm going to do is to sew from just a little bit underneath the lining down to the hemline and to hem it, and then go ahead and put the snaps in, and then we'll put it on the doll and see how it looks. So here's our finished product. The skirt is on a 3rd scale island doll. I believe she's 58 or 58 6 centimeters tall, and as you can see, it has no waistband, and the flares are in the bottom there. So that's how it fits. It turned out really well. I did go ahead and tack down the facing on the inside just so that it wouldn't want to ride up. And now I'm going to go ahead and try to spin her around. So I'm going to stop the camera for a second, and then I will come back, because if I turn her on this, she'll probably fall down. All my stands are packed away for the doll show that I had yesterday, so I've actually got her to stand here, but if I try to spin this, she'll probably turn. So I'll be right back with her turned around so you can see the back. So here's the back, and there we go. Get the lighting a little bit better. But yeah, it just fits, and it kind of comes down right exactly where I wanted it. So this fabric isn't a real drapey fabric because it's a little suit fabric. So it does make the little flares kind of stand out. I did notice when, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and turn her around here again. Let's see if we can maneuver this. For the front, it could have been a little bit more narrow piece in the front. So if you want this flare and this flare to show a little bit more in the front, then this front piece you could make a little more narrow. And I think it would still fit her fine, because right now it's riding pretty low on her. So her actual waist is a little bit higher than where the skirt's riding. So if you wanted to go ahead and make that a little more narrow, then you could, and it would still fit her okay. So that's the finished product, and she kind of flopped down onto my table there, and so I'm just going to let her rest for a minute. And yeah, so that's how the skirt turned out, and the jacket will be sewn pretty much the same as the jackets that we've done for the male figures. So all the steps would basically be the same. So until we can actually do a video of putting that together, you can go ahead and put the skirt, the jacket together just by referencing those other videos. So there she is. I am still in PJs this morning because it was a long day yesterday. A lot of fun that we had at the show, so it was good to see a lot of you. But I went ahead and had some extended rest after yesterday, packing all that stuff. So I am going to stay out of the picture and just wave. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.